What is blanket consent in research? Blanket consent, also known as general consent or universal consent, is a type of consent used in research that involves obtaining the agreement of participants to participate in a wide range of research studies without specifying the particular studies that they will be involved in. Unlike specific consent, which requires participants to provide informed consent for each research study individually, blanket consent allows researchers to use participants' data and samples for multiple research studies without seeking further consent from the participants. The concept of blanket consent is rooted in the idea that obtaining consent for each individual study can be time-consuming, costly, and burdensome for both the researcher and the participant. By obtaining blanket consent, researchers can streamline the process of obtaining informed consent and increase the efficiency of their research studies. However, the use of blanket consent is controversial because it raises ethical concerns about participants' autonomy, privacy, and confidentiality. Participants who provide blanket consent may not fully understand the nature and scope of the research studies that they are consenting to, which can compromise their ability to make informed decisions about their participation. Additionally, the use of blanket consent can raise concerns about the privacy and confidentiality of participants' data and samples, particularly if the data and samples are used for research studies that they did not anticipate. The use of blanket consent is subject to ethical guidelines and regulations that aim to protect participants' rights and interests. These guidelines and regulations require that participants are provided with clear and concise information about the nature and purpose of the research studies, the potential risks and benefits of participation, and their right to withdraw from the studies at any time. Participants must also be informed about the measures that will be taken to protect their privacy and the confidentiality of their data and samples. Despite the potential risks and concerns associated with blanket consent, it can be a useful tool for certain types of research studies. For example, blanket consent may be appropriate for studies that involve the collection of large amounts of data or samples, or for studies that are designed to investigate a wide range of research questions. In these cases, obtaining consent for each individual study may be impractical or not feasible. However, researchers must ensure that the use of blanket consent is justified and that appropriate safeguards are in place to protect participants' rights and interests. This may involve providing participants with ongoing information about the studies that their data and samples are being used for, as well as providing them with opportunities to withdraw their consent or to restrict the use of their data and samples for certain types of studies. In conclusion, blanket consent is a type of consent used in research that allows researchers to use participants' data and samples for multiple research studies without seeking further consent from the participants. While the use of blanket consent can increase the efficiency of research studies, it raises ethical concerns about participants' autonomy, privacy, and confidentiality. Researchers must ensure that the use of blanket consent is justified and that appropriate safeguards are in place to protect participants' rights and interests.